This presentation will discuss the community of Newton in Surrey, British Columbia, following windshield and walking surveys completed by 2 KPU students. Windshield and walking surveys are tools used in community assessment. In a walking survey, observations are made on foot, which is helpful when looking in smaller areas. They are also helpful when looking at finer details, which may be more difficult to pick up on from a moving vehicle. In a windshield survey, observations are made from a moving vehicle, which can be helpful when assessing larger areas. Windshield surveys are also beneficial when making observations of larger aspects of a community that are closer to the roadside. For these windshield and walking surveys, we assess the community of Newton, which is located in Surrey, British Columbia. Newton covers an area of 5,781 hectares, with a population of 149,040 residents. 49% of the population are immigrants. The average household income is approximately $90,000. The unemployment rate is 7%. In terms of housing, there are 43,905 occupied private dwellings, with 31% of this number being renters. Newton is known for its parks, greenery, and diversity. Newton is not defined by geographical boundaries. Instead, its boundaries are municipal and community-based. To its west, Newton is bordered by the city of Delta. To the south, Newton is bordered by Mud Bay and the South Surrey community. To its east lies 160th Street, and to its north, Surrey's communities of Whalley and Fleetwood border Newton. During our surveys, we noticed there are both single-family and multifamily dwellings dispersed throughout Newton. Apartment complexes, houses with basement suites, and townhouses are all present in the area. There are some for lease signs in the windows of apartments. A few homes with basement suites have for rent signs in their windows as well. We felt comfortable walking through the neighborhoods. However, some alleyways between streets were less maintained and dimly lit. There are some small gardens. However, the snow and ice covered most of the greenery. The sidewalks are shoveled, which tells us that community members maintain their areas. There was a park in walking distance in each neighborhood we walked in. We noticed that in one small park, there is a community garden set up as well. Some homes have basketball hoops in their driveways too. In terms of parks and recreation, there are elementary school playgrounds for children to play in. Some elementary schools have better maintained and newer playgrounds in comparison to others. There are also parks independent of schools, such as Bear Creek Park, Newton Athletic Park, Chimney Heights Park, and Green Timbers Park. Bear Creek Park's playground is large and relatively well maintained. The image on the right was taken at a park near a Sikh temple, which holds a South Asian event called Kabaddi. At the parks we visited, there were a few elderly individuals and children were present in the parks taking a walk, as the playground was still covered in some ice and snow. We felt safe walking through the parks. However, Newton Athletic Park had some empty beer cans scattered around the parking lot and beside garbage bins, which we noticed during our walk. Newton Recreation Center, which is conveniently located behind a Newton Exchange bus loop, offers a swimming pool, fitness center, gymnasium, and ice rink for the public to use. Known for its greenery, it came as no surprise to us when we noticed the luscious trees that dotted the streetscape. There are flowers planted in yards and on either sides of some of the roads. A few neighborhoods have large trees planted in front of their homes too. There are sidewalks along the streets and pedestrian lanes. Some areas have increased traffic congestion due to the high number of cars in neighborhoods. Major storefronts are relatively attractive. However, older strip plazas and smaller stores are less well maintained. We noticed trash cans throughout plazas and by bus stops and exchange loops, which help to prevent littering. There is outside seating at restaurants and in parks such as Newton Athletic Park and Bear Creek Park. The area of Newton is generally well maintained. However, with recent snowfall, some streets and neighborhoods were a bit icy. A few potholes can be seen on the roads, and tarring of portions of the road is visible too. There is garbage strewn across some roadsides, as seen in the image on the far right. However, we did not observe any trashed or abandoned cars. There are some vacant lots surrounded by fencing for future construction projects. Some graffiti can be seen on a few bus benches and advertisements as well. We did not see any signs of rodents or raccoons in the neighborhood. Newton is filled with areas for its residents to collect for social gatherings. There are a number of different restaurants in the area, such as Wings Restaurant, along with fast food chains such as Tim Hortons and Bubble Tea, and sports bars such as Kelly's Pub. Strawberry Hill Cineplex Theater is a common area for youth to hang out after school and on the weekends. People seem to be enjoying themselves by restaurants and coffee shops, such as Starbucks. There seem to be events happening at religious centers too, as well as the community parks. For example, Bear Creek Park has a miniature train system that families can ride around the park. All of these common areas are open to the public and are easily accessible through transportation services. We saw a culturally diverse array of individuals during our walk along some of Newton's routes. We saw people of South Asian, African, European, East Asian, Middle Eastern, and South American descent. We heard various languages being spoken as well, such as Spanish, Hindi, Punjabi, Mandarin, and Farsi. Grocery stores indicated predominant ethnic groups. For example, we walked by Sabzi Mandi and Fudagana, which are grocery marts that contain herbs and spices popular in South Asian culture, such as curry leaves, coriander, and masala. Restaurants reflected ethnic diversity too, as they specialized in different cultural cuisines. For example, we walked by Spice 72, which is Indian cuisine, Sushi Kami, which is Japanese cuisine, What the Pho cuisine, which is Korean, and Gulberg Restaurant, which is Middle Eastern. We also walked by Newton Cultural Center, which helps create awareness, appreciation, and pride in the artistic and cultural achievements of the Newton community. There seems to be a respect for and peaceful coexistence between the various cultures that make up the Newton community. We saw two libraries in the Newton area, which were the Newton Public Library and the Strawberry Hill Public Library. We also walked by the Strawberry Hill Cineplex theaters. There were many shopping, fast food, and dining restaurants scattered throughout our walk. Restaurants ranged in ethnic diversities. We believe this is a good reflection of the cultures that make up the Newton community. On our walk down 88th Avenue and 140th Street, we saw the Surrey Arts Museum, which is easily accessible through TransLink's 96B line bus. We saw signs for the new Kabaddi Stadium planned, which is a popular South Asian sports event. Newton also has an ice rink, golf course, and Bell Performing Arts Center. While we did not see any historical sites, it seems as though there are historic attractions in the Newton community, such as Colebrook United Church, Burkhart House, Centennial Totem Pole, Christopher Brown House, George Rankin House, House Kennedy, Red Cedar Stump, Rock Tree and Boulder, and the Strawberry Hill Farmers Institute. There are many ways for residents to get around and out of the Newton community. Most people seem to get around by car. However, public transit is easily accessible throughout all parts of Newton. No SkyTrains were seen, but buses seem to take Newton residents all throughout their community. The 319 TransLink bus, as seen in the image on the far left, takes residents from the Newton Exchange bus loop down 72nd Avenue towards 120th Street. Then it follows 120th Street down to Scott Road SkyTrain station. Along major streets, such as King George Boulevard, service is frequent at about every 10 to 15 minutes. Other streets, such as 132nd Street, has public transit service less frequently available at about every 30 minutes. Many people use public transport such as students, seniors, and those commuting to and from work. Parking at many stores is readily available. However, in smaller plazas, it can become congested at peak times. We saw a handy dart bus, which transports those who have long-term mobility impairments to their destinations. Intersections were strewn across communities, as well as pedestrian crosswalks for easy and convenient travel by foot. There were also bike lanes in communities, as evidenced by the image on the far right. We walked by the Newton RCMP Police Detachment, which is located close to 73rd Avenue and 137th Street. We also noticed some police cars and transit police at the Newton Exchange bus loop and secondary school parking lots. This may indicate moderate criminal activity. However, statistics indicate that in 2018, there was an 18% drop in crime in the Newton community when compared to 2017 crime statistics. We heard ambulance sirens coming down King George Boulevard heading towards 72nd Avenue. Unfortunately, we did not see an ambulance station during our surveys. However, we did see the fire hall located on 72nd Avenue and 132nd Street, as seen in the image on the slide. There seemed to be fire hydrants at every block we walked or drove past. There seems to be neighborhood watches around the Newton Exchange bus loop, as evidenced by volunteers wearing green vests patrolling the area as well. There was a neighborhood block watch sign in the Newton community located on 146th Street and 76th Avenue too. Based on these protective services, we would assume that Newton has a fairly safe neighborhood. There are many stores in the area, such as Shoppers Drug Mart, Frutiana, Superstore, and Costco. There are medium to large parking lots at all of these stores, and bus stops are close by as well. The atmosphere inside the stores are pleasant, with many shoppers throughout. The size of many stores is large, so there is a wide assortment of goods available for purchase, such as food, household items, and clothing. There are dry cleaning and meat shops located in strip malls found throughout Newton, as seen in the two images on the far right of the slide. We saw a lot of transportation-related industries in the area, including mechanic shops, trucks on the road transporting goods, and TransLink buses. There are also a lot of retail and food businesses along the road. We saw furniture warehouses, construction workers, TransLink workers, fast food workers, as evidenced by their uniforms, and city engineering workers, such as landscapers, transit police, and RCMP officers. The transportation-related industry can have a negative impact on the environment, as it creates air pollution, noise pollution, and land pollution. This can have negative implications for the health of the human population. Fast food and dining restaurants also cause pollution as a result of excessive disposal of foods that can be used to help those with low food security in the Newton community. While we did not see any newspapers located beside sidewalks or on doorsteps, we did go into a local grocery store and saw a diversity of newspapers available to the community. There was the Surrey Now Leader newspaper, which highlights current events in the city of Surrey. There was the Mingtao newspaper, which is a Chinese language newspaper published by Media Chinese International in Hong Kong. There is the Miracle newspaper, which is a bilingual and bi-weekly newspaper of the Muslim community of British Columbia. There was also Desh Punjab Times newspaper, which is a South Asian-based newspaper in BC. In terms of advertisements, we only noticed those for local businesses. There was no evidence of political activity, and there were no political-based signs on yards, buses, or buildings. Youth, elderly, and what appeared to be homeless individuals were the only ones we encountered during our walks on Newton's sidewalks. There was the occasional worker, as evidenced by their uniform, who seemed to be on their way to work or on break. The evidence indicating that someone was homeless was the shopping cart full of belongings that accompanied these individuals. We may not have seen families due to the timing of our windshield and walking surveys. For the most part, people seemed to be safe but distracted. They were either talking on their phones, looking down at something on their phones, listening to music, or talking to themselves. Upon further research, we discovered that Newton is ethnically diverse. 58% of the population are of South Asian descent, 25% of the Newton population are Caucasian, and 17% of the population fall under the other ethnicity category. There are approximately 30,300 Newton residents that identify as being part of the Aboriginal community. Apart from the housing size, it is difficult to distinguish individuals by socioeconomic status within this community. There were many different religious centers that we stumbled upon during our windshield and walking surveys throughout Newton. On our walk from 72nd Avenue and 144th Street to 72nd Avenue to 120th Street, we saw two mosques, one which ran an elementary school. We also saw one Fellowship Baptist Church and one Sikh temple. A church-run school we walked by was Khalsa School, located on the same grounds as the Sikh temple. We also walked by Calvary Christian Academy, which is a church-run elementary school in the Newton community. Based on our surveys, we saw one Sikh temple, two mosques, one church, and one school respective of each of these religions. In terms of language, 54% of the population primarily speak English. 34% of the population speak Punjabi, and 12% of the population primarily speak another language. It seemed as though the community made an effort to support communication in these various languages, as evidenced by newspapers, local advertisements, and health pamphlets provided by Fraser Health. Most were adapted in the Punjabi and Mandarin languages. Based on the healthcare services offered in the Newton community, as well as the observations during our windshield and walking surveys, it seems that the prevalent health issues in the Newton community are diabetes, hypertension, alcohol and substance misuse, mental health conditions, and homelessness. On our walk along King George and 64th Avenue, there was a South Asian diabetes clinic, which could indicate that this health issue is prevalent within this community. In our walk through Newton Athletic Park, there were a couple of empty beer bottles thrown on the grounds, which we also found in other areas of Newton as well. By the South Asian Diabetes Clinic, we saw a building called John Vulcan Academy, which is an alcoholism treatment program. One may assume from this observation that alcohol misuse is a health concern in the Newton community. When we walked by the Newton Exchange bus loop and nearby bus stops, we noticed that some individuals had a shopping cart full of belongings, and they exhibited tremors, smelled of alcohol, and had Narcan kits hanging from backpacks. A lot of fast food chains in the area can be risk factors for obesity, cardiovascular conditions, diabetes, and hypertension. There are no signs indicating communicable disease incidence or spread in this community. We noticed a multitude of services offered to the Newton community during our windshield and walking surveys. There are many medical clinics scattered throughout the community. However, they seem to be very busy. Other services included a Service and Employment Canada office, a Diversity and PICS office for help with access to community resources, employment help, and guidance for new immigrants and refugees. We saw Newton Dialysis Center, an animal hospital, and a home health office. Newton's public health unit is located 2 minutes away from Newton's biggest bus exchange loop. There was a South Asian Diabetes Clinic, as mentioned in the previous slide, and Alcoholism Treatment Program office located on King George Boulevard and 64th Avenue. There is also an Options Clinic located in this complex, which provides sexual health, employment, and housing resources. There were Life Labs offices also located along our walk, and a couple of dentist and orthodontist offices located along 72nd Avenue. Based on the window signs, general clinic hours were 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. All of these services were in close proximity to bus stops, and they were sidewalk friendly. There are many public and private elementary and secondary schools in the areas of Newton that we walked and drove by. We noticed that the smaller elementary schools look as though they are in need of some repair compared to the larger elementary schools. For example, Westerman Elementary School's playground is rusting in spots, the paint has chipped off, the wood looks old, and the playground equipment is scarce. Contrarily, Chimney Hill Elementary is a larger elementary school with much more playground equipment that looks newer. All elementary schools had soccer fields, baseball diamonds, outdoor basketball courts, and playground equipments. All secondary schools are large and look in relatively the same state of repair. The ones that we walked by include Princess Margaret School, L.A. Matheson Secondary, Enver Creek Secondary School, and Queen Elizabeth Secondary School. While all schools had portables, which may be a sign of overcrowding, the fields looked well maintained and trees were trimmed. However, the sidewalks and parking lots were still icy from the latest snowfalls. This could pose as a safety risk to staff and students. When walking and driving along 72nd Avenue, we came across Kwantlen Polytechnic University's Surrey campus. The school community seems open to the public as there are old open house signs around the campus. There are turning points into the campus from the main roads on each side of the campus, and there are bus stops that are 1-minute walks away from this campus location. Sidewalks are located around the perimeter of the school, which increases accessibility to Kwantlen's Surrey campus. Based on a sign stating Winter Market open Saturdays, the campus seems to offer community services that are open to the public. Upon reflection of our windshield and walking surveys of the Newton community, we noticed that Newton is rich in diversity, opportunities, and growth. It is easy to access a variety of healthcare services within this community. There are many transportation options available throughout Newton, and there are multiple elementary and secondary schools located in this community. We also notice there are lots of activities that promote and maintain one's health, such as gym facilities, recreation centers, secondary and tertiary care. Food is easy to access, whether it be in restaurants or the grocery store. There is also diversity in the options available for clothing, food, and local events. Overall, we found that Newton lives up to its status of a park-filled, diverse, and relatively safe community. Thank you.